Hello everybody, I'm Vamer427 and welcome back to Scrap Mechanic. Now, as you can see, I have something potentially familiar looking, but maybe not quite. Now, if you remember, one of them, I think actually the last episode I did on Scrap Mechanic that I had uploaded was about self-leveling suspension. And essentially it was my attempt to just try to make a car that had, well, self-leveling suspension, or if it wasn't itself self-leveling, that it would always stay up against the ground, perfectly kind of thing. And, well, it eventually kind of turned into this. So this is like a ultra-realistic buggy, essentially, that not only has this self-leveling suspension, but has extra brakes that you can disable, a gas tank, and rockets and stuff. Now, the reason why I did this is, well, I got the self-leveling suspension. Then I'm like, I want to make it super realistic. Let's add some brakes, because this thing can go pretty fast. I want to add a little something to slow it down, make it brake better. Because I wanted to make it, because, you know how sometimes you can see car commercials, even on YouTube, and it's like, get the all-new Chevrolet, Volkswagen, Audi, I don't know, car, and it's like, it's got all-wheel braking and things like that. It was an attempt to make a car that was super fancy and had a bunch of stuff to it. And it eventually came out with this. Now, I've explained to you, you can go check out other videos on my channel about how the gas works, just because, I ain't going to explain it again because it's really complicated. Yeah, it's just gas tank, and, when the little meter I have here essentially reaches 0, the car won't move anymore. There's also a light indicator that, when the fuel hits a certain level, it will tell you, will go on telling you that, hey, you should fill your fuel up soon. But, yeah, so I should show you guys what happens. So as you can see, I press the first 2 buttons there. So the first button engages the suspension, and then the second one here, if I zoom in, you can see that little light. Whoops, that's caps locks. You can see that little light turns on. So that's the brakes. You can see there's S for suspension, B for brake. And pretty much, I'll show you what happens. So we'll drive forward. And essentially, so how this, what I'll do is I'll disable the brake, the braking. And essentially how this self-leveling suspension works is, you can see there working a little bit, is whenever the wheels of the car get too low to the ground, there's some sensors here, and what will happen is the sensors will trigger after, I think it's 2 blocks. So pretty much when the car is bending down, the sensor will get closer to the ground, which will then trigger a piston to push in the suspension, which is pushing the wheel up. So essentially push the car up a bit. And each sensor is individually controlled. So this one could extend and that one wouldn't. It's not there isn't just back and front. It's like there's left, right. It's fully self-automated once you turn it on. And now one thing you do need to know is that it does need to be, now it's not going to work. The suspension itself might kind of work, but not really. So it's only once this happens is when it becomes a fully engaged, and the sensors will actually sense things. Now, how the if we couldn't tell how the brakes work, it's really simple. If we turn it on, whoa, you can see there a little something happened. Pretty much how it works is, let's drive forward. What will happen is there is a timer that, so whenever I press the S key, what will happen is, for I think it's about 2 or 3 seconds, the first time that the S key is activated, it will activate these pistons, which will essentially literally just push up against the wheel. They have to extend 2 blocks so that there's actually enough, so to actually impact it. I might change this, heck, even now, by adding, extra mod things to it. Heck, even just adding, dials or something onto it to add extra width to it and then shortening it. might be possible changes I make. Heck, at the end of the video, for all I know, I could change a little bit. But essentially what it does is it literally just pushes up against the wheels, creates friction, and stops it. This has gone through a lot of phases. Like, there was a point where this had 2 engines on it. And what would happen is you'd drive forward, and then whenever you press the S key for a few seconds, there'd be essentially an extra wheel on every actual, like, pair of wheels. So this one would have 2, that one would have 2, that one would have 2, that one would have 2, so yeah, so on and so forth. And pretty much what would happen is that engine would only activate when you pressed the S key, and it would only go backwards. So essentially what would happen is, for a few seconds, the car would essentially be going into, like, super, ultra, mega reverse mode, and then, essentially, since you wouldn't want to be going that fast backwards forever, after a certain amount of time, it would stop. It would shut off the engine, and then it would only be using the power from those wheels this way, equal speed kind of thing. But yeah, most of the logic, like this logic, is essentially, it's not 100% necessary, but what it is you can see it's a distance and a tracker, and over there, there was a tracker gas tank, so essentially, this can only be a certain distance, so it can fill it up, kind of thing. The velocity and acceleration have no point whatsoever, just like how, again, I didn't need that dial, this dial here that tells speed. You could have just easily read the numbers, but I know I wanted a dial. But yeah, again, since I've already explained how the gas works and everything like that, and everything else here, yeah, you can see after a certain amount of time, brakes will turn off. And yeah, and then the rockets, the thrusters that are on the back, they essentially just activate for, I believe it's 3 seconds. So, you press the button. You go forward. Oh, God. I have gone through there. Okay. But yeah, so that, again, the thruster is really simple. It's just timed. One thing that, for some reason, I couldn't seem to fix, even though I've wired stuff up correctly, I think it's just the way some things happened. This will fill itself, the car will not only fill itself up the first time, whenever you take it off of a lift, but, yeah, thrusters go off, so, yeah, it's kind of weird. So, yeah. Again, this is kind of thing that's always kind of been under, it's always been working, just because, it's, constantly changing. But here, so let's drive around. It, obviously, you can tell it has all-wheel steering. That's just because, it's good to have that. Now, why did I add now, what, you're probably wondering, what's the point of having these suspensions and the brakes? It's the whole, if they don't do anything or add anything to it, what's the point? In reality, it's just, the suspension does actually it very much does improve the smoothness of driving. It makes it very controllable. And the brakes actually do stop the car. I think I did tests with and without the brakes, and there's like I think it's a 30 to 40 block gap. Here, let me try to show you. A 30 to 40 block gap, of, stopping and starting. So pretty much what I mean by the gap is essentially so with the brakes on, you'd stop, I think it was 30 to 40 blocks sooner than without the brakes on. Like, that's how they worked. Like, that's how good it was. So, there actually is there's a method to the madness. And it obviously doesn't stop you immediately, but it does stop you quite quick. And obviously, updating. Heck, one thing I might even consider doing is, because that adds, but see, then it might not be able to turn. So yeah, this is obviously changing and things like that. It's going through phases, and thinking about stuff now. Could I add mod lights essentially to add depth instead of having this have to extend 2 blocks and bend the wheels on their axles, could I just, yeah. But that was like the super realistic self-leveling suspension buggy. Don't know where it's going, but either way, see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!